The Bill and Kelly Show is recorded at Studio A at Executive Suite Squared in beautiful Hammond, Indiana. Now, here's Bill and Kelly.
I spent 38 years in higher education, my last 22 as president of Huntington University. As college and university presidents and faculty and administrators know, higher education has changed dramatically, especially since 2008, 2009. And colleges throughout the country are trying to reduce expenses. They're trying to find that in their academic programs, they're trying to find that in their staff programs, they're trying to find that in their operating expenses. I am excited that FundED is a way to meet those challenges. Through FundED, we have found that colleges can, in their first year, save 20 to 30% in energy costs. And the good thing about that is that it's a fixed and flat fee. It will be fixed and flat, your energy costs for the life of the contract. And it will be something that will be predictable, something that will help in budget making. So the concept of FundED is an exciting one, I think, for individuals trying to figure out how to make budgets balance and how to meet the expenses of higher education. And I think students are very much across the country in colleges and universities wanting to look at green initiatives, wanting to save, to economize, to have clean energy as a part of their lives. I think the exciting part of FundED is that this encourages that. It's a very visible way with a solar field to do that, but it also encourages, the company encourages students to get involved. And I can see classes around it, I can see guest lectures around it, I can see faculty doing some research around solar. It can be a very exciting thing. It could be a part of the curriculum, but also I think will resonate with students as they look at campuses to decide where to go and say, hey, this might be the place I want to go, because they believe in green initiatives and they want to push that on their own campus.
Hello and welcome to the Bill and Kelly Show. Today we have two folks that are from FundED, an organization that sets up relationships with schools in putting alternative energy in, like solar panels. As today we have Kelly Hipskind and Patrick Poer. Welcome to our show, gentlemen, and we're so honored to have you on.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We're excited. We're humbled.
Yeah, we're humbled. So this has been a passion of mine for years. I felt that always that we should prepare. I want to take people back in time to something before you guys were even a twinkle in your parents' eye. The oil embargo of the 70s. This happened in time where we got in a dispute with OPEC, and they stationed tankers outside the shorelines of the United States and refused to deliver oil.
Yep.
Mile long lines in front of gas stations. People couldn't get heating oil when you still had oil furnaces. For those who had gas-fired furnaces, there was problems with paying bill. It was a horrible time. Wow. Since then, we have always struggled with creating an energy policy. In all of our attempts to create one, we never got there. And so one of the things that has blossomed, and I see, as I've driven through neighborhoods, something that is happening is people now considering solar energy for their homes. And, before I just do the whole show for you guys, I'm going to. So
we love the passion, Bill. We love the passion, man. It's great.
Oh, man, I am passionate about this industry. So why don't we turn it over to Kelly and Pat and have them, first of all, tell us about where you guys are from and how you came to be with FundED.
Oh, we're happy to do it. Excited to do it. Appreciate everybody actually, taking a few minutes out of their day to join and listen to your show and listen to our story. We know that, people have options and busy lives, and, we're really excited to share it. Bill, it's really important for people to note that Patrick and I both have had education businesses in the past. And my dad's still a dean of students in a high school. My sister's diversity coordinator for IU Kokomo. Diversity is obviously a hot button. getting her PhD in that. I said I'd never go into schools, helping out schools, had a transformation in my faith. That's a whole nother story for depending on maybe the demographic. But, Patrick and I both really had exited businesses, been friends for 9 years. I joke around often when we're in front of schools and say, Patrick uses the term, friends more loosely than I do. You got to heckle your buddy, but he's founded a business he can give everybody a kind of quick cliff notes on. I founded a business helping out with teacher evaluations. That was a hot button. There was a lot of teachers kind of frustrated about that. Bill, with your education background and experience, it was kind of a bear to manage, merit pay and the like. My mom's a retired teacher. She was a retired teacher. So I heard at the dinner table all the challenges. I came in and helped with a great team, smarter than me, of people to develop technology to make the process easier, and serviced about 60 school districts in Indiana. And I started to present to Chicago Public Schools. I know you have a lot of Chicago listeners. Chicago Public Schools was kind of interested, Houston ISD, and ended up successfully selling that business to Herff Jones to scale it nationally. And just to be able to help schools and make a tangible difference, and also, do well while doing good, run a successful business. I mean, for an entrepreneur, that's like the qualm, right? As they say in Jerry Maguire. It's one of those things where you really can feel fulfilled in your heart, and you can also take care of your family. And, that really lit a fire for me to say, you know what, maybe with my God-given, gifts and talents, I can actually help out in schools, but be on the kind of the public-private partnership side as an entrepreneur. That's just my little background. Patrick can give you a little cliff notes on him, and then we can kind of talk about, how we married up and got together.
For sure. So Indiana native, so born and raised here in the great state of Indiana, mostly in the Indianapolis area. We now live on the north side of India in a place called Carmel. Have always been an entrepreneur since I can remember, and always interested in business, primarily in technology for the last 20 years. So doing a lot of managed services, application development, those types of things. But I had the privilege of being a co-founder of a company in the early 2000s called Synovia. And they eventually grew the company to school bus tracking, fleet management, child safety type systems. And they've now got an app out called Here Comes the Bus, tells you where your kid's bus is, are they on it or not, number of other innovative services. And currently they're in over 1,000 school districts nationwide, and about 125,000 school buses under management. So pretty significant footprint. I was there in various capacities, over the years, and just really grew an affinity for working with schools and, finding innovative ways to have an impact on the bottom line and ultimately on the classroom. And, as Kelly mentioned, we've been friends for a number of years. People have always told us we should work together. We have complementary skill sets. And
I had to ask him, are you sure you can put up with me? You sure you want to get into this venture?
Most days the answer is yes. Most days.
Some days the answer is yes.
What are we doing here?
But when your skill set and your heart can align with the wallet and with a buddy, and Patrick's got some things he can do that I frankly can't or wouldn't be as good at, and I'd like to think vice versa. But
for sure,
it really does allow us when you align your forces to really focus on the mission and the vision and where we're going. We really have a lot of fun, even through battle scars and hard work and challenges. And look, school business is complicated,
I'll marry that with solar energy.
And utilities and finance. I mean, it's a complicated space, but we've spent a lot of time making that, like I always say, the complexities and the simplicity, right? How do you take something very complex and make it very simple? And spent a lot of time and effort, doing that and trying to figure out a way to make it easy for schools to adopt solar much faster and more cost effectively than they ever have in the history to date.
Yeah. And one thing that I'd like to explain before we get on, which may kind of create a foundation for you in the school districts, there are two, there's a transportation budget, but there's a general fund, which goes to pay teachers and all the labor expense. Mm-hmm. And then there's a capital projects fund, which generally is capital improvements. I believe, unless they've changed it, the utilities are paid out of that fund. Now, you know what? I think I may be wrong. They may be charged out of the general fund.
Correct.
One of the things is if you create a pie chart and look at the expenses with all the funds put together, the number one expense obviously is labor, the teachers, the administrators, the custodians, everyone is put into that. But what I found being involved with school district, pretty close to second, if it wasn't second, was utilities. Gas and electric were a high portion of that operational budget. And so that really speaks to what you guys are doing and forming partnerships with the school districts.
Well, two things. I don't know if you saw Patrick moving around in his seat, but we run a lot of models. We both have, but Patrick's part of the business. And I know why he's moving around, because you're an educated man, which is nice, Bill. There's a lot of people that wouldn't know that. It shows you do have your background. You understand this.
Well, it's been about 8 years, so I just
you know enough. You are correct. Next to payroll, the second highest line item is you're going to be your power bill. It's one of those things where you could use a quick kind of analogy to say death, taxes, and your power bill, right? You got to pay it to keep the lights on, and it's just not going away. And it's ever increasing. Now, in Indiana, right? I know you have the Michiganers, so you got Michigan, right? And Indiana listeners. I know you got Chicago, so we could talk about different states too, because we've looked at all of them. But Indiana specifically used to have kind of 5 buckets of money, and they've streamlined that to 2. You are correct. And then you've got, a big pool of that money is going towards power. So when you can come in here and say, hey, look, we can save you off your electric spend 15, 20, 25% on average in specifically where you're at in Northern Indiana, in year 1, those are meaningful dollars. That gets not only the school excited, but taxpayers pay attention. You're really benefiting the community at large, plus the environmental benefits and so forth and so on. So, there's an absorbent amount of challenges schools face. Enrollment changing, budget's hard to predict. If there's a CFO listening right now, they're shaking their head going, yes, because, you have your average daily membership or your price per pupil, depending on the state, which is basically cheeks and seats, right? The state funding comes down and it's an allocated amount per head. When that changes or is in flux, how do you predict the budget? And then the school's got to have their budget done in advance of the state budget being balanced. So we can come in and say, hey, look, we're not going to solve all the world's problems, but in our little slice of the pie and world, when we could say you can lower it, and with the first ever in Indiana, Michigan, the Midwest, you have a solar as a service agreement. We now have a flat fixed service fee that's great and easy to predict, lowers the bill year 1, no payback period, really easy from a governance perspective to deal with us because we can bundle multiple schools in at one time, even across state lines. It's state line agnostic. And it just really makes for a very meaningful, tangible, positive impact to the school, from a governance perspective, from a political perspective, from a cost savings perspective and everything. So
you mentioned the two buckets of money as well for schools. One of the advantages as well is there's no debt to the school. They don't have to spend any capital to install the array and the farm that goes in there. We finance all of that, and then basically it's paid for by our long-term service fee. And as Kelly mentioned, you've got significant year 1 savings, but we also lock that in so it protects them against inflation. And as you probably know, utility rates, especially in Indiana, have been increasing dramatically over the last 10, 15 years.
Historical data is 4.5% cost plus inflation. So, I mean, that's proven shared knowledge. That's not Sun-funded's, model.
And so with that, you get compounding savings over that period. So NEO, the project that we just had the ribbon cutting on in Portage, Indiana.
Just finished construction, Portage, Indiana, first project, super exciting. The mayor was out there. She's pumped.
Yeah.
The students were just elated and thought it was the coolest thing that they can actually have this in their backyard per se, like in their parking lot. They're just phenomenal.
And they're going to be saving 25% year 1, but then our projected savings for them over the life of that agreement is $1.5 million based on current utility rates and inflation.
Absolutely,
rates.
And go ahead, Bill.
So just so I wrap my mind around this, you guys supply the panels, the array. You install the array. So the school district's expense is your service fee to them. And I assume under the service fee, you take care of the maintenance and the management
Take
of
care
the
of
array?
operations, maintenance, insurance, warranty, everything. So
Uh,
literally, the
wow.
schools aren't energy experts, nor do they want to
No.
become that. A lot
Yeah.
of times, though, in Indiana, the way they've done it is, they've sent out a referendum and bond and debt it. And there's been a debt instrument involved with it, so they do own it, but they got to deal with all the headaches of it. And there's stuff on top of that contract that's not always accounted for that they've got to account for. So FundED comes in and takes out all the stress. They relieve it. The school doesn't have to go through the arduous, confusing, and sometimes slanted RFP process because, we're able to basically be the RFP as a service provider and bring in multiple schools. We can leverage economies of scale, efficiencies of capital, efficiencies of construction, and the school is winning in a major way. And to Patrick's point, Bill, if the school's like, well, I've got an allocated amount of money that I've got to spend this year, right? Because that's how it works. You got so much money from taxpayers, and taxpayers don't always want to hear that, but that can be the reality of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now the school can use those for other things, and benefit on other things they might not have been able to get to because FundED can come in and take care of the solar project. So it's a really win-win-win across the board.
So a couple of things, if you don't mind me asking questions as we go along. When you say you create the RFP, so are you acting like the architect for the school district and writing the specification? And so this really goes out for bid. Am I correct?
Or to be clear, Bill, it's a great question. And I don't know how, it depends, right? You have some people that might be listening to this or watching it that don't know energy, and you might have some that really know it. So I'm going to try and thread that needle to kind of cover everybody. But if architects or engineers are brought in, they're brought in through us. We have the knowledge and the expertise in the team to deal with all of that, and a partner that helps us deal with all of that. So, long story short, correct. The time, the expense of bringing in an architect or engineer is not needed. Our wallets are aligned essentially with the school. We don't get paid until it's executed. We take on all the risk of time and development and capital. And, unlike some in the East and West Coast, third-party financing is more relevant. In Indiana, we're the first market mover bringing this to the state. So, the way that it happens in these states is more common. Here it's not. So for us to have a standardized agreement that's already vetted and validated by multiple attorneys and schools, both in Indiana and Michigan right now, and investors and construction companies and everybody, it allows us to kind of standardize it and be the company that's taking point on making this happen. So you don't have multiple parties, you don't have a middleman per se. You deal with one company the entire time, beginning all the way to the end of the service. So
if a superintendent or a assistant sup in charge of building maintenance is listening to this, their first question is going to be, who is the professional engineer? Who's the PE that acts on, because unless they change the state statute in order for a school district to get involved in construction, which is a construction project, a PE has to be present. So you contract that out, or you have someone?
Good question. So actually, I'm going to be a little, I don't want to be too cute, but the first question they're going to say is, this sounds too good to be true. So that's the first question we always get. And it's hard, right? Like I said, schools are complicated. Trust is everything. And because we only serve schools, we're like, well, guys, if we get blackballed by one school, we're going to get blackballed by many or all of them. So we're putting our reputation on the line here. But anyway, once you get through those hurdles and educate folks, they actually start to understand how our structure works. We've actually got a partnership lined up with a vertically integrated company that's done about 150 megawatts worth of solar. So we've got the in-house essentially expertise lined up. We've hired our own direct kind of in-house expertise. We've got a double major, math and electric, and an engineer, that does kind of our solar analyst work. What we've learned over, I would actually make this argument to some companies. It might sound bold, but because nobody's done this in Indiana, Patrick and I over the last 3 years, I would say we've got more institutional knowledge about solar in our specific vertical compared to any other energy company in the state of Indiana. I would put that up even against utilities. And the reason why I say this is because nobody has had to deal with all the nuances we have to deal with to bring the service together. So when you have to deal with how does governance work in a school? What's compliant, right? How are we adhering to those policies, and what do we have to do from a third party ownership? How does it work with net metering and or not with net metering? How does it work? So we have to actually know cold the accounting, right? The compliance with tax equity investors and what the financiers are looking for when they're buying tax credits. We have to be looking at all of that specifically for our model and schools, specifically in the states we're in. So I would make an argument with relative confidence that we would be the experts that know more than any other company single-handedly in Indiana and Michigan.
Right, but you make sure all the requirements are met.
100%.
The RFP.
100%.
Yeah, I mean,
We've spent millions of dollars building out the model and getting our first schools going.
Yeah, I mean, obviously navigating the regulatory constructs are essential, across the board. So schools, procurement requirements, property taxes, utility regulations, state and federal tax requirements. So there's a litany.
You got all the check boxes on the state board of accounts.
If you saw our team, just look. I would encourage everybody just look on our website and look at some of our advisors. I mean, the former all judge for the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission is our attorney. I mean, you have really, really great people supporting us.
Yeah. Because if you've never gone through anything, being called into a room where you have all the auditors from the state board of accounts, they appear to be nice people, but they aren't.
They're not.
Well, no. I will tell you.
I apologize because I know some of them personally, but when business comes to business, if you don't answer their question, they raise an eyebrow, and I could guarantee you what is going to happen afterwards is not going to be pleasant.
You know what? I will tell you, when you're on the wrong side of the fence or the coin, and you don't dot your I's and cross your T's, they can be a bear for sure.
Oh, yeah, they will.
Fortunately or unfortunately, that's their job. But I will tell you, we've had a verbal green light from them as we walked them through our model and met with them directly early on. So I mean, 100%. I mean, we have put this through its paces to shoulder the risk, so our schools don't have to be nervous, moving forward and advancing the ball with us.
Yeah. So what does this arrangement look like? You've kind of given us a surface that you come to them and you have this model where you go out and write the RFPs, you oversee the installation of the panels, you manage the panels, because God forbid if you drop this on the IT department, because I'd end this conversation right now. People know that because they get dropped on enough, and maintenance people don't have to worry about it, but they still have to oversee if these get attached to the roof or what have you. So what does this look like afterwards? So you get it installed, everything is running fine, you're managing the project. Is there, what other benefits are there to the school district? Good
question, Pat. I'll let Patrick hit on some of these. I just want to clarify, when you say write the RFP, we don't write the RFP for the school to put this out there to bid. We're a service agreement. The school is not required to have an RFP. When I say we do the RFP, it's essentially like that in the sense that we are able to look at not just the one school we're dealing with, but multiple schools in a portfolio, that it gives efficiency on the capital and on the construction side of the house. The reason why a lot of companies don't do that is because schools are decisioned by 100 committees, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there's a lot of committees involved with making a decision, and even the educators know this, so there's nuances and challenges. So it's typically decisioned by a lot of committees, a lot of consultants, expensive attorneys, engineers, and everybody else. And there's good ones out there, don't get me wrong. But we're able to say, hey, not only are we going to do all this for you, but you're not having to go through all that for just a one-off project. We're going to do that for you and others all at the same time.
All right.
That's what I'm just to clarify how we're a little different and unique there in the value proposition. But anyway.
So you act as a consultant for the school district.
Well, it's more than that, and I appreciate this. I'm actually glad you're asking the questions, and I'm glad people can hear this, because we don't always used to get to go into all these details if it's a 5 or 10 minute, call presentation with a school.
I should have warned you about this. I get very inquisitive.
No, I love it. I love it. Honestly,
I'm just trying to ask the questions as superintendent.
Your listeners and viewers are open to it. We love sharing and dropping knowledge on people. So, we need to educate the market. Even if schools go solar with another company, like, we really want to educate the market, because we're passionate about schools winning and not being encumbered and challenged by multiple, conflicting interests out there. So I will say that, for us to come in and do this, we are the one, I hate to use this is going to sound gimmicky, but to just kind of punch it up, we're kind of the one-stop shop, if you will. Like, we don't just do a piece and then leave or flip out. Like, the school only meets with us, interacts with us, and deals with us for for the 25 years that we're servicing the customer. So when we meet with boards or there's community members there, we say, hey, listen, we're not digging dirt and leaving. We're moving into your community. So if we do this at Chesterton or Bolingbrook near Chicago, or, you know, right across the border, you go into Michigan, right up there in New Buffalo or wherever. If we do this, then, you know, we are treating this relationship and partnership as we're as close to a partner as you can get as a vendor, to where we're going to be moving into your community for the life of the service. And if a panel goes wrong or if there's an issue, it's on our dime to absorb that risk. Otherwise, you know, it's going to cost us down the road with the school based on our relationship. So we have really aligned our interests with the school to make this as low friction and as low risk as possible. There's always risk in any relationship, but as low risk as possible to partner up. And I don't know if you want to add some of the other benefits.
You started tickling, you know, what comes next. Okay, so great. We got the solar farm installed, the school's saving money. That's awesome. What else comes along with it? Well, when we started the business, we had two components of our mission. We wanted to impact the bottom line. Clearly solar does that. And we also wanted to impact the classroom. And so we've developed a program we call SAMI, S-A-M-I, SAMI Solar. That's really kind of three pillars that are involved with SAMI. We've got an online educational platform, you know, project-based learning, lesson plans, articles, news, research. Kids can, you know, log in, share their own content. You know, it's
actually the first of its kind in the country. And as an IT guy in a school, Bill, in past life, you can appreciate, you know, that when you have a program that actually works and is, you know, people use it, it's a lot of fun. And kids are demanding renewable energy more than ever before. Marches, they're petitioning their boards. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's hard to find fresh, relevant content. Mm-hmm. Teachers want it, but everything is given down from the state, right? A lot of things, state standardized curriculum. We are not a curriculum developer. We can supplement for a one-off class, or we can enhance or add to, you know, to make it relevant to things that the students are interested in today. Yeah. So that's what SAMI really does. It's more innovative than we intended, you know, to be frank. It's more innovative and more relevant than we thought it would be. And it's actually growing more interest from schools, probably even beyond the solar itself. This is actually what schools are becoming increasingly more interested in.
So you do have an educational opportunity for the school district, for students to become engaged on alternative energy, specifically solar. Now,
actually, it's really kind of more broad about sustainability. I mean, obviously, solar and renewable energy is a part of that. And, you know, high level, you know, renewable energy is forecast to be growing at 1,000% over the next 10 years. It's a global transformation. And, you know, we want to do our part to help students be prepared and equipped to take part in that transformation. And you know, there's so many opportunities from the trades, engineering, STEM, you know, finance, entrepreneurship. I mean,
and you know the trades gaps that are out there. Not all these kids are going to go on to, you know, to Harvard, and nor should they. I mean, you know, someone will work out right out of high school for a multitude of reasons. So to have stuff that can excite them and be relevant and
hands-on, practical, real life, you know, experience is just hugely valuable.
SAMI stands for sustainability, academics, marketplace, and innovation. And we want to make sure those things are delivered on every step of the way. You have a kiosk in the lobby that shows, you know, the power and the decrease in number of trees being saved and everything else. And then we've got an educational array. So you can go out there and throw snow and dirt on an actual live solar farm and see what it does to your power in real time. So I mean, we only serve schools, guys. You know, we only serve schools, Bill. So it's important to note that we want to see a tangible and positive difference to the classroom and the bottom line. These are our two guiding principles. Before we went into solar, those were Patrick and I's two guiding principles. We said, when we ever leave that school one day, we want to know they're better off because we were there. And that's why we're investing time and money in ways that no other company that does solar in the United States of America does. And I know that seems like a bold punch-up statement, but it's true. There's no company serving exclusively schools with exclusively solar with an educational program. The closest things that are out there are these non-for-profits that people sponsor, and it's a booklet that collects dust on a shelf. It's just, it sounds great in a great sales presentation, but it's not meeting the needs and challenges that teachers and students are demanding and having, like SAMI is starting to.
Well, one thing on behalf of the school district is very important is that, you know, especially in the state of Indiana, with the way they changed funding with the tax caps in 2008, I believe, were the tax caps. it creates a kind of a difficult situation for school districts if there's any increase in that they need to cover, whether it becomes salary or capital projects in new construction. Guess what? They can't go back to the state. They have to create a referendum, and those are not pleasant things. So from a school district's standpoint, anything you can do to create a opportunity for operational expense reduction to avoid that referendum is a win-win situation. In fact, this is something coming from a commercial world and into education that I found kind of interesting. In industry, you always looked at ROI, return on investment. In a school district, it's anything that happens outside of a year, because their tax collection, what we would consider sales in commercial world, is their tax collection. Happens within a year. It changes from year to year, and their expenses are from year to year. So often to them, it's primary. If they can reduce any of those expense lines during the year, so much the better. Return on investment, it is a point of interest for them to make sure that they're not wasting money, but often it's what happens in that 12-month period between when they have their hearings and lay out their budget and so on.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. And, right now school funding is getting significantly challenged by COVID. The governor has said not going to change state funding, but we all know that
you got a $4 or $5 billion deficit or whatever it is, and schools budgets are over half that, half of that. And while I think Governor Holcomb is smart in a lot of areas and he's really doing all he can, I mean, the reality is there's going to be things that are going to be out of their control. I mean, you're going to have to find alternative funding sources and creative financing mechanisms. I could tell you that kind of one of the main lobbyists, if you will, and when I talk to my friends at the Business Manager Association of Indiana and the Superintendent Association of Indiana, and same with the facilities guys and everybody else in Michigan, I formed great relationships with these people. I've been very blessed and fortunate. They're all saying the same thing. Like, there's going to have to be shortages and cuts. And so schools now are saying one of their main topics of conversation, take SunFunded out of this for just a second, but is alternative funding. Now more than ever, schools are looking for private-public partnerships. They're looking for creative financing mechanisms. They're looking for ways to recoup some of that, because the last thing they want to do is cut teachers. The last thing that anybody wants, right? I mean, you don't want to sell our kids' education short, right? So how can SunFund and another company step up to the plate and make that investment and reinvest directly back into these communities and schools? And we've created actually a program as a result of COVID with our first public school in Michigan, talking about their price per pupil getting cut, $800 a student, about $1.5 million off the top. Mm-hmm. We said, how can we help? We figured out a way with our investors and everybody else, depending on the fee structure that's chosen, to advance money from the deal to where schools can receive a check. And at NEO in Portage, Indiana, we cut them a $50,000 check and surprised the board. Cut a $400,000 check to Otsego Public Schools. We're soon to cut a check. I'm gonna leave the amount out because I want it to be a surprise to another school in Michigan that's moving forward with us. And we're anticipating we could invest upwards of $20, $30, $40 million in the state of Indiana. And there is no personal guarantee. It's not debt. It's securitized as long as we can qualify them for our solar as a service investment. SunFund is able to cut that check, and the school doesn't have any additional money out of pocket or time or referendum or debt or politics. I mean, this is cutting edge. I mean, this is really, really at a time in need that was frankly just started from a tough conversation was having the superintendent of how can we help? Mm-hmm. And, because we only serve schools, we spend time talking to the people that deal with finances and the politics and the board members. I mean, this is our life. It's not like we're selling a school one minute and a hospital the next and somebody else the next. I mean, we're here to make an impact on the school. So we feel very fortunate and blessed to have stumbled into a program that can make a real difference, at a time of need to these schools. And it's an option. They don't have to do the cash advance, but it's an option, that we're offering for the first time ever.
All right, so we're going to have to start wrapping up here pretty soon. We don't want to make this too long, although this is a topic that can branch into more and more shows because it's important. And we didn't even talk about the long-term look at what we should be looking at as a society. I mean, people are on this kick. Oh well, we're exporting oil now. Well, yeah, now we're exporting oil. until we start creating more of a sustainable environment where people can be less reliant on fossil fuels, so much the better. And that conversation is another show and another time. But it is kind of interesting. And I would like to carry on this conversation maybe in another show if you guys would entertain that and what this looks like more from the school district. But let's talk about how someone can contact you and your websites and so on. And we're going to have some other information wrapped in with the show, and hopefully they'll get a better understanding and what this whole relationship looks like with Sun Funded. And
yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great question, Bill. If people are interested in contacting Sun Funded, so for example, right, if a school is interested in contacting Sun Funded, if it's K, I guess it doesn't matter, K through 12 or higher ed, but Jesse Heil's a rep that is running point with schools. In higher ed, we've got Blair Dowden. He's the past president, 22 years for Huntington University. So very fortunate to have Blair on board. You can contact either one of those guys. They're busy right now. We've got projects that are coming online in Michigan. We've got some universities that are going to be big news here in the state of Indiana, big news. But, Jesse Heil and Blair Dowden would be two guys that would love to meet with you, happy to meet. Sometimes Patrick and I, depending on time and where we're at and what's needed, we'll be involved in some of those meetings. But we're growing to the point right now where if anybody wants to reach out to us, they can go to our website, www.sunfunded.com. And they can reach out to the company by going through the website and emailing Jesse and Blair to set up a time to talk.
Awesome. Boy, this sounds like a great opportunity from schools on the surface. And what you're doing is doing all the groundwork for the schools and creating that environment that they need, which is reduced expenditure. And that's really what comes to the bottom line, because at any time, if this doesn't become a cost benefit, I could guarantee you it's the CFOs are going to say, we can't do this. But yeah, but I know some extremely tough CFOs out there, and so I'm sure they'd look at this and really welcome entertaining the idea of seeing this cost savings. But boy, there's more that needs to be discussed here, really a lot more. But we wish you guys the best. And is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up the show?
Bill, I would just say, to anybody listening, there's a lot of challenges we all face in our country today. You don't need to hear them from me. We all know the political, the race topics. I mean, they're all coming up. But you know what? They can be mitigated by all of us just banding together. And I want to specifically punch that up with what we're doing. Schools spend a lot of their time troubleshooting challenges. There's only so many people in the leadership positions. I think our communities need to be patient with schools and know these guys are working really hard, and gals, they're really good people. They really care. A lot of them come from the classroom. I think if we could start being more solution oriented, and I want schools that listen to this to know there's people actually out here that care. They're not just trying to make a buck off of a school or take advantage of school. There's actually not just us. There's people out here working hard, and school business is hard, and it can be political. And there's a lot of taxpayers and there's a lot of decision makers. But take a deep breath, everybody. Hang in there. Schools keep fighting the good fight through COVID, and just know, when schools shut down, and this is our only business as an early stage venture, it could have shut us down too. Yeah. You got to keep the faith. You got to remain positive and just keep fighting the good fight, schools. And thank you for serving our kids. And I hope that we can help you and be a part of that, whether that be in adding information and education or maybe one day partnering with you.
Yeah. And, I'll close this by saying schools are the part of the first responders right now.
Sure.
And it's a crazy, the COVID crisis has created a flat line in that people thought that they would never be serving the front lines are. Now they're putting their lives in danger by doing things that they never thought that they would be. The classroom, when those kids are back, which it looks like a majority of them are going to be going back to virtual until we get over this crisis. You're right though. They are a lot of people that are probably being overtaxed right now, and not for any fault of their own. And from teachers to administrators, but we all need to keep them in our minds. And when we talk about things that there are a lot of people they're looking after our future that don't get the credit.
No, everybody take a deep breath, work hard, have the faith, we'll get through it.
Well, Kelly and Patrick, it has been a pleasure. We like to thank you for letting us know a little bit more about Funded, and we'll put all the information we can. We wrap it together in this show, and boy,
Awesome.
that's it. Well, listen, gentlemen, we'll close out the show right now. Everyone that's listening out there, we want to thank you for listening. First of all, we want to thank you for being so loyal to our show over the years. And we want to wish you a very safe, enjoyable rest of the week and weekend. And please be safe. We'll say goodbye for now.
Cheers.
This episode of The Bill and Callie Show is brought to you by
Ram Financial and Wealth Management. You can never start too early. Building plans for your financial future, that is. Those who plan ahead and save early have more time to build assets for retirement, support a family, save for higher education, a new home, or other personal goals. You can contact Sean Graham, your financial advisor, at 219-595-0371. That's Sean Graham at 219-595-0371. Securities and investment products and services offered through Wendell and Reed Inc. Member FINRA SIPC. Graham Financial and Wealth Management is a separate entity from WRI. Ram Financial and Wealth Management.